Welcome, Jenny, to the Dating Intentionally podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so we are going to talk all things Burned Haystack Method, but the first thing I want to know from you is what is something you are being intentional about or something you want to be more intentional about?
Related to Burned Haystack or in general?
Life.
I'm actually trying this. I'm an English professor, so this is probably not a surprising answer, but I'm trying to read more fiction. I read a lot of nonfiction for my academic work and for the things that I teach. But I have a colleague here who studies empathy and like how to be more intentionally empathetic, which seems like something we should maybe all be doing in America right now. And one of the number one ways to do that is to read more fiction because it like forces you into other worlds and gives you perspectives that you wouldn't have. And so that's what I'm trying to be intentional about, more fictional reading.
I love it. Well, offline, I'll have to get some book recs from you because I am also trying to read more in general, all
Uh,
things. But speaking of reading, I dove into so many of your writings on Bird's Haystack Method in the last week, and I'm just really excited to get into it. And I just have to say, it's incredible that you've created this community on Facebook of over 150,000 members at this point, right?
Over 100
It's
and I think we're at about 175,000 now.
wow. Oh my
Yeah, it's
gosh. We'll link.
growing fast, yeah.
That's wild. Really quick, let's just go into what burned haystack dating method is, and then we'll kind of get into some questions.
Okay, so the origin of the method, and I think this is true of a lot of academic projects, is it started out as just me trying to help myself. I was, encountering all the horribleness that all women encounter on the dating apps. And I thought I need to like create a method to streamline this whole process, to get better results, to stop wasting my time. So I wrote a set of rules for myself to follow. The rules are very strict. And I started following them, and it changed everything immediately. It forced the algorithms to, number one, show me a different kind of person than what I'd been getting, but also gave me, like, within inside my own head, these like rules of engagement that prevented any kind of lost time and frustration and abuse and all the other stuff, aggression. It roots all of it out. Again, like for my own purposes, had been like looking for advice online, like how do you make these apps work better? And there's two pieces of advice that women get over and over again. And the first is to make yourself as appealing as possible to as many men as possible. And the second is to like be open to people you wouldn't normally meet, give everyone the benefit of the doubt. And I think those are the absolute worst pieces of advice because number one, there's no shortage of men to date. Like men outnumber women on almost all the apps, like sometimes significantly so. But there's a real shortage of dateable men. So I created this like set of rules to like point myself toward these dateable men and it worked. So I was like, maybe I'll share this with a few other people. And they were like, wow,
Yes.
like this is game changing. Then I realized like this is teachable, it's shareable. And also, the only way I can tolerate staying on these apps is if I turn it into like an academic mission. And my area of expertise is applied rhetoric. So rhetoric is, language analysis, image analysis, which is what we're all doing on the dating apps, right? We're analyzing words and pictures. But I have some very like concrete and methodical ways of doing this that are teachable. I primarily use a method called critical discourse analysis. And we talk about that. You've seen it probably a lot in the Facebook group. It sounds like fancy academic words, but it's very teachable. Um, and then I decided I needed a metaphor. I like to use metaphors to like introduce people to new content. That's something I do a lot in my teaching. And people always use that phrase, right? I'm trying to find the needle in the haystack. So late one night, I Google searched, how do you actually find a needle in a haystack, like in real life? And the answer is that you burn the haystack to the ground. And when I saw that, and I know this sounds dramatic, but it's true, I literally got chills because I realized, no, that's it. it's the opposite. We're being told to pick through all these pieces of hay and like convince ourselves that this piece of hay, although it looks really rotten, might really be okay. We should probably spend some time with it. And that's just such a waste of time and energy. You have to obliterate the haystack, and then the needles will
Mhm.
just be there because metal doesn't burn. So that's the
Right.
origins.
Amazing. And it's, as you're talking about this, I remember learning about the Burned Haystack Method when I was single towards the end of my journey after I kind of nailed down my own approach. And I did feel like we aligned with a lot of things, but I feel like my Burned Haystack approach was more like I met the haystack in person and then burned it, where your approach is more like burning it on the apps.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Exactly.
well, specifically, I mean, you do talk about profiles, but also you have mentioned in the rules, which we'll get to, messaging, where you can find a lot more to block and burn.
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure.
So, I'm just curious though, like, you have all this incredible expertise in rhetoric, you have your PhD in rhetoric and discourse studies, and why dating though? Like, what made you wanna apply this to dating?
Well, I mean, originally it was just because I was dating,
Right,
and
right, right.
I needed a way to, make my academic knowledge work for me in this more personal way. But as I got deeper into this mission, and I really understood like what a huge cultural problem this is, it's not just the dating app experience is annoying and frustrating. It's that it's dangerous and aggressive and misogynistic and commodified, right? Like these are like insidious, deep cultural problems. And the fact that we could use this method to kind of get at them was compelling to me. I felt almost like I
Yeah.
had a responsibility. Like I have to, how could I not tell people about this?
Yes, I totally see that, and I think it's a great connection to make because it is really like, dating is a big piece of this really big pie that
Right,
is the patriarchy and, like, what we're trying to figure out and navigate and get out of, essentially.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, I wanna go through some of the rules, and you have 10 rules, which I'll link all 10 in the show notes, but just for time, I wanna jump into 5 of them that I
Okay.
wanna hear you talk about more.
Okay.
And the first one is just one I really like, which is the first rule. The app is a tool, not a place to live. So can you unpack that a little bit?
Sure. So the apps are what they call gamified. They're literally coded to suck you into this like infinite scroll or infinite swipe or whatever it is with the dating app, right? And this is premised upon like brain wiring, dopamine hits in the brain. And it's the same principle that slot machines work on. And Tinder was the first to intentionally code it into their app, but they all do it now. Um, so it's addictive, right? And then if you so you have this like reality about how human brains work, and it's also tied into intermittent reward systems. It's why people get addicted to heroin. Like these are very
Right.
powerful human sensitivities or susceptibilities. But then when you intersect that with the search for love, which is like cuts to everyone's core, you have an even more powerful and more addictive and higher stakes endeavor. So it's understandable why people want to like, be on their apps all day, but it'll destroy your mental health and it's a really just poor use of time. So I always compare it to like a toothbrush. You use your toothbrush a couple times a day, maybe 3 times a day, and then you put it in the drawer and walk away. And
Right.
that's what you should
And
use
you
dating.
don't think about it. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I'm with you. When I was dating, I would, like, limit myself to about I think I had a rule where it was, like, if I was swiping for 10 minutes and I didn't swipe right on anyone, I'm done. Like, at
Yeah,
that point,
good.
I just stopped swiping right, like, I'm not doing this
Yeah.
anymore. It was like that or, like, 15 minutes, whatever happened first. Like,
Okay. Yeah.
usually yeah.
And I think that's the important thing. More than the number of minutes, it's exactly what you were doing. You're like, "No, I'm in charge of this.
Yeah.
The app is not in charge of me."
Right. Right, it's like,
Right.
"Oh, okay, I haven't swiped right in a while, maybe I should just put this down and move on." You know?
Yes.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, the second rule I wanna talk about is focus on messaging over scrolling and swiping. Messaging is where you'll find the info you really need.
Yeah.
So, I love this because what I talk about on dating intentionally is being a little bit more generous with swiping because you can't know everything you need to know from just a profile, and most people are horrible at writing profiles, so you get
Right.
a lot more information in messaging. So,
Yeah.
yeah, tell us how that has gone for you and your clients.
So we actually have like an infographic that we use for messaging, and you
Oh,
may have
yeah,
seen that. Yeah, that's
I've
been
seen
really
it.
popular in the group. It's almost like If he does this, go to the next level. If he does this, block. So it kind of takes some like guesswork out of it. And I think, the more AI comes into the dating app scene, a lot of the profiles are written by AI. Now, men use AI for messaging too, but it's usually pretty apparent. That's like a gut level, like I kind of feel like I'm talking to a robot, then you probably are. Like I think people can trust their intuition there. So
Yeah.
I just think the only meaningful interaction is real life, real time, which is, the closest approximation to that on the apps is messaging.
Yeah, I agree, agree, and people, I think, do reveal a lot more in a conversation when they're reacting to you as well, and not
Yeah.
just like, "Here's what I'm presenting." Yeah,
Right. Right.
I will link that graphic in the show notes too because it is super useful. And when I was dating, I didn't have this graphic, but I had like kind of like this mindset that I was a game that the guys and like I knew the rules, and if a guy broke a rule,
Yeah.
it's like you're out. So it was like if they
Yeah.
mentioned anything sexual, done. And it
Yep.
was like okay. And my husband, who I met on Hinge, who also had a really, by the way, you talk about this sometimes, like boring profile.
Yeah.
It wasn't funny, but he is really funny. But his
Yes.
profile wasn't funny.
What you just said is really important. So if we could come back to that, it'll be
Oh
helpful
yeah.
to your audience. Okay.
Yeah, totally. So
Right.
when we were messaging, he just didn't do anything wrong. That's kind of how I ended
Yep.
up on a date with him. He just
Yeah.
was a respectful, normal person. We talked about books. Like,
Yeah. And that's what I tell women over and over. I phrase it as in you use profiles to rule people out, not to rule them in. Because you can
right.
tell if someone's not dateable from their profile. You can't necessarily tell that someone might be awesome, like your husband, right?
Yeah,
And I actually like when men get too like clever with their
I
profiles,
know.
even if it's not offensive, I'm like, nah, there's probably something wrong here. I think what we're looking for is like normal people. Like, can you
Yes.
act normal in the culture that you live in? Because like that's a good sign, right? That's a good sign for socialization.
Yeah.
And so I
That's
think
where
this
the bar is. But yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think your mindset though is exactly where people want to be. People don't need to blow you away. They need to not do anything wrong.
This is the rule, the whole thing, block to burn. You say block those you've interacted with but aren't a match to prevent them from reoccurring in your feed. So essentially, instead of swiping left or unmatching, you are blocking so they never appear again. And I
Yeah.
guess when I brought this up to my husband, 'cause I told him we were talking and what you're about, he was
Mhm.
like, "How do we know that actually works?" Like, he's like, "Why would the apps do that? Why would they allow
Well,
you to just remove someone completely?"
okay, so at one point I'm pretty sure they were legally bound to. Like
Mhm.
blocking was put in place to be protective, right? That's
Yeah.
why it was a
It's a
different
safety
process.
measure.
It's a safety measure. None of the apps will reveal their algorithms or exactly how they work. So anybody who claims to know that is either lying or they own Hinge, right? And that person is not going to talk. I have heard a couple people say lately that because of Black to Burn, some apps may be finding a workaround. I have no idea if that's true or not. Because again, there's no way to know. I in my experience, it does work when like I think on the mainstream apps, if you block someone, you're not going to see them again because I mean, there's not like humans overseeing all of this, right? Like it disables it within the app. What that doesn't prevent, and what people do all the time, is cancel their account and start a new account because they know that's going to give them the most algorithmic activity because you get the most attention when you're brand new. And so
Right.
like it's a whole new account, even if you block their previous account, yeah, you're going to see them again. So I think when people think it's not working, that's what's actually happening.
Yeah,
Um,
that makes sense.
yeah, block people before interacting with them. Like, if I get a match and I know right away I'm not gonna be interested in that person, I just block because, like, why bother?
Yeah. We'll get to I have questions about that. We'll get more
Okay.
into that. But yeah, I do obviously this whole metaphor of burning the haystack, just so listeners understand, to burn the haystack, you are blocking people, literally burning them so you don't see the piece of hay again. Right? You
Exactly.
are yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Love it. And the last rule I wanted to get into was no ludic looping. And you kind of mentioned this in the first rule about just gamification aspect. You also
yeah.
say no attractions of deprivation. What does that mean?
So, an attraction of deprivation is when you're kind of, like, hooked into a person specifically because they're not giving you the amount of attention you desire, and it's like It's the same neurological effect as any other kind of intermittent reward system on like a slot machine or Candy Crush. And it works with people too. And you've heard a lot about like the attachment theory, avoidant attachment, and that's a more nuanced discussion than people generally like
Yeah.
to engage in social media. However, avoidant people can be sort of compelling because they become like this challenge for us to just get their approval, even if we're not sure we want it, right? The person who's getting less attention than they require in that dynamic is in an attraction of deprivation. You're being deprived of something you need, and that
Um,
perpetuates the connection. Whereas the opposite is an attraction of inspiration, where you're with someone who kind of honors you and celebrates you and wants you to know that they're there for you. It's like not playing all these games.
Got it, got it. Yeah, I mean, I think with the apps, one mistake I see people make is that they get attached to people and
Yes.
answering or not answering before they've even met, before they've even connected. It's like you don't need this person to answer
Right.
you. I mean, I think I had another coach on here said no one's real until you've met them in person.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little dramatic, but basically, yeah. It doesn't mean you should be disrespectful or discard people or like treat them
Right.
like they're nothing. But yeah, like don't be attached to them at all until you have actually met them.
Yeah, I
I
agree
think
with
is what
that.
that rule is saying. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then the last rule actually, sorry, one more is no men who can't plan the date. And I wanted to unpack this a little bit because I feel attacked by this rule because it's not that I didn't okay, I definitely wanted guys to plan the date, but I often initiated meeting. Does that go against this rule?
Not necessarily initiating meeting.
Okay, because 'cause I'd be like, "Let's continue this conversation in person." That's kind of like one of my lines, like, kind of more or less, if I knew I wanted to meet them.
Mhm.
Is that against this rule?
No, that's not against the rule, and the rule is actually rule is an unfortunate
I
label, which I
know.
gave it. So, like, I'm taking responsibility for that. But what rule number that's rule number 9, right?
Yeah,
No men who can't plan the day. What that actually is what we call a heuristic in applied rhetoric, which is basically like an informal test to glean information that's then usable, right? So, here's the heuristic for no men who can't plan the date. We have a labor imbalance, at least in America, but in a lot of other countries too, where women tend to kind of automatically pick up emotional and domestic labor, right? So that means we're going to make sure, that the laundry's done. We're going to make sure there's a grocery list. Even if we don't do it, we're going to send him the reminder to go to the grocery store and pick up the milk. We're going to keep the family calendar. We're going to do all these things. And that translates into dating very easily. And the danger is that if you do that right off the bat, you could like waste a whole bunch of weeks with someone before you realize, oh, I'm going to have to do everything by myself forever. And if we were starting with an even, playing field, like an equal distribution of labor, this rule wouldn't be necessary, but we're
Mhm.
just not. I mean, any workplace, who plans the birthday parties, right? It's always the women. So the point of rule number 9 is to sit back through that first date or two and see, is this a man who could like suggest a couple restaurants that are thoughtful, that can make reservations, that can handle a few logistics? It's not to get him to do all the work forever. It's
Right.
strictly like an information gathering mission.
Yeah, and I think that's useful. I agree with you. I think I guess I wanna make sure I still wanna encourage to get off the apps. I still think people who use them, men and women, to say, "I want to meet," to avoid I think you have a rule about no pen pals. To avoid
Yeah,
that, it's like, "Hey,"
right.
you need to tell them very directly because I
Mhm.
think people suck at taking hints,
Yeah.
"I wanna meet you."
Yeah.
And then you can sit back and be like, "Okay,
Yeah.
they have this information I wanna meet. Let's see what they do with it."
Or even see if it's co-created, right? Like, I feel
Right,
like I met so many men who they would ask me, "Do you wanna meet?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, that sounds great." And they'd be like, "Great, let me know what you wanna do." And that was the end of it, and I might never hear from them again. Like, that's a labor imbalance problem.
right.
I'm like, "This was your
Totally.
idea."
I appreciate you unpacking all these rules. Again, I'll link the full set of rules in
Mm,
the show notes. So I want to move on and talk about profiles. And you mentioned earlier there are some things where you immediately block to burn before even talking about them.
right.
And I was swiping through Bumble yesterday and I wanted to just like kind of pitch some of these like common profile things that you just see if you would block and burn.
Okay.
Okay. If their Instagram handle is in their bio.
No, I wouldn't automatically
Okay.
block and burn for that. Now,
Okay.
if I went to that Instagram handle and it was full of really horrifying things, then yeah. But if it I think that's, a way people choose to present who they are, right?
Okay.
You could actually
Okay.
get a lot of really, like, I'd kinda welcome that as an artifact of interpretation.
Love it. That is not what I expected from you, so love that. Fish pictures.
Oh god, no, no fish pictures. And here's the reason. It's not even that there's anything wrong with fish pictures or fishing. It's that if you are so clueless that in 2025, you don't understand that that's an internet punchline, then, like, what else have you missed? Did you miss hashtag me too? Did you miss Black Lives Matter? Right? Like, I just now, if someone's doing something that's truly funny with a fish pic that's, like, poking fun at that, then maybe, but mostly no.
I agree. It's like they're kind of out of touch at that point with the fish
Yeah,
picture.
right.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. What
Mhm.
about if they're a parent and they have, like, their babies or their kids in the profile?
Okay, this is a very gendered situation. So it's really, really, really stupid for women to put of their children in a dating app profile. It puts the children at risk, puts her at risk. That's just not true with men. And
Interesting.
the reason is that 99% of pedophiles for sure, but violent offenders in general are male. Like, just logistically, men's children are not at the risk that women's are if they're
Mhm.
dating other
In
women
heterosexual
in
dating, yeah.
in a
Yeah.
heterosexual dynamic. So women get really, really mad about men having kids in their pictures, and I don't think it's a good idea. Like, I just think it's a bad practice.
Generally, just don't do it. Okay.
Don't do it, but I kind of understand. I mean, men haven't been threatened their entire lives by women, right? It doesn't occur to them that it could be dangerous, which it should. So,
Totally.
yeah.
Okay, so that's just more of like a cautionary don't do that, choose another picture or a
Yeah.
picture where maybe the kid isn't facing the camera
Yeah,
or like
exactly.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Or
totally.
at a distance, right? Like, there's ways to do that.
So something I notice a lot when swiping is just poor grammar in profiles. Like
Yeah.
I hate when people write their bios all with lowercase, like no capitalization of the first word in a sentence and like just weird spacing. What do you make of this?
So I think this is very much an individual call. Like, I'm not gonna date
Mm,
somebody who does that. Grammar is too
same.
important to me, but I'm an English professor, right? So of course I care about it. If it doesn't bother you at all and that's how you write, then fine, whatever. But I do think it's worth noting that, like, the apps actually have built-in ways to, I mean, there's autocorrect. Like, this is someone who didn't take a lot of time to set up their
Yeah.
profile. So there is potentially a clue there about, like, how invested is this person in this mission, right?
Yeah. I'd always say,
Yeah.
like, a typo or, like, just bad punctuation takes me out of it. It just
Yeah,
distracts
yeah.
me from and that's probably why I would swipe left or I guess in your case, block someone. I wanna kind of back up a little bit and just talk about the rhetorical patterns that
Okay.
you talk about on your Instagram account. Some of these rhetorical patterns, which I've watched a bunch of them, they
Mhm,
include things like bombastic syntax, which
mhm.
you kind of pointed out as, like, the AI profile or,
Yeah,
like, just doesn't make any sense.
right.
The "Are you my mother?" kind of the
Mm,
guy who, like, wants someone to take care of him, make me a better person, challenge me,
right,
fluent in sarcasm, which we all know and love.
right.
And you had one called The Final Piece of the Puzzle, which is, like, a
Yeah,
guy kinda looking for one to complete his life, and you
mhm.
showed a picture of a guy with his arm open, and you commented on how creative it that was. My husband had that in his profile.
Oh, no! Well, maybe he was the first one. Like, at some point, that was original, right?
Yeah, the picture was pretty old, like, when like, his pictures were all over the place, he had pictures of him with short hair and very long hair, and I'm like, "I don't know what I'm gonna get." Like,
Right, yeah.
it was like the pandemic hair growth, so I guess a span of 2 years, not too bad,
Okay. Yeah.
but yeah, he had an older picture of him like this, and I just when you said that, I'm like, "Oh my god." So my question okay, so I have a lot of questions, but number 1 question, are rhetorical patterns always negative?
Well, no, definitely not. It's just that all the ones I've categorized are,
Okay, okay.
because that's the premise, right? You're ruling out, not ruling in.
Got
Um,
it, got
no,
it.
you could certainly identify positive rhetorical patterns,
Okay.
and I
Okay,
should.
good to know.
I should do that.
Yeah, I don't well,
Yeah,
I feel like when I mean, you have a list of so many in your Facebook, group, and I guess maybe when you've exhausted that, maybe you'll switch
yeah.
to a different category, but I look, they're fun to learn about. I guess my other question, like, because you have this amazing group full of people who are practicing Burned Haystack Method.
Mhm.
But is there a danger of reading too much into things, like really scrutinizing every little word?
Yes, I think there is. And is there a danger that someone could be so strict that she could miss out on a good match? Yes. However, I think that danger is far less than the danger of wasting so much time with the go nowhere guys that you miss someone good. So it's
Yeah.
like it's a calculated risk, right? Like this is, and there's a luck element here, obviously, right? Like we're not totally in control of this.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I feel I was very lucky that I met my husband when I met him because it was, like, really a time when I'd just come out of something that didn't work out, and I was, like, kinda, "All right, back to the apps," and
Yeah.
I lined up 7 first dates in a week, which I don't recommend people do, and he
Yeah.
was one of them. So,
Okay. I don't
like
know. I mean, when you first get on, I don't know that that's a bad idea because number 1, it prevents you, like, focusing too much on one person. It also gives you a lot of comparison points.
Yeah, yeah, and I also, like, yeah, it just kind of it did distract me and
Yeah,
and it ended up working out, but I don't recommend I think 7 first dates in a week is a lot. I would
that's
say
a
maybe
lot.
2 or 3.
Where do you
Um,
live?
I was in Seattle at the time, so there
Okay,
was
so
a
you're in
lot Seattle had a lot of great guys, like,
yeah,
educated,
liberal,
they
yeah,
had good jobs, yeah,
right.
liberal, exactly. Okay, the another thought I had while just going through your work is, like, because 'cause we're focusing a lot on us, the user, viewing men's profiles, but then
Mhm.
how do we listen to this conversation and not overthink or worry about every hidden meeting in our own profiles?
Well, I mean, one thing is that I don't think men are really using burnt haystack.
Well,
Like,
yeah,
I
true.
mean, there's a lot of research that suggests men don't read profiles at all. They just look at pictures. But that said, I don't think that that's a good excuse to not put any thought into it. I've studied a lot of the profiles that worked that led to needles, like in very like I do like a full
Yes,
blown critical discourse
I
analysis.
read that whole thing. I
Oh,
read
you
that
did?
whole
Wow.
thing, yeah,
Okay.
and I actually pulled out the you at the end, you pull out, like, 5 key points in a great profile, which
Yeah.
are clarity, directness, intentional crafting of appealing tone, so I guess, like, warmth, specificity and concreteness, and brevity.
Yeah.
So, I was nerding out so hard over that, like, I love this so much. I'll
Oh,
link it in the show
thank you.
notes too. I don't know if anyone will read it because it's
That was
really
a
long.
long report. I'm flattered that you read it.
I mean, your writing is really good, so it was
Oh, thank
easy
you.
for me to I'm usually intimidated by stuff like that, but I did read the whole thing. But yeah, I liked that you give this direction. Do you think the 5 things we just mentioned, do you think that also applies to men's profiles? Like, should men be taking that advice too of clarity, directness, brevity?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think a good profile is a good profile, like,
Mhm.
regardless of gender, regardless of orientation. I think, the profile is supposed to, like, sort of be that first human point of contact, and I think those things, like you said with your husband, he seemed normal and nice, like, that's
Yeah.
huge. Be normal and nice in your profile. Yeah.
Yeah, in his profile, let's see, he talked about how he, like, loved music and audiobooks and stuff. His other prompt was about how much he loved Nick Cage movies. That was it, and by
Okay.
the way, we now have a portrait of Nick Cage in our bathroom, so could have seen
Wow.
that coming.
Good for you for limiting it to the bathroom, though. That feels like a good compromise.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun surprise when people it's, like, in our, like, guest bathroom,
Okay.
so and then he also mentioned he asked a question like, "What was the concert you went to or, like, are going to?"
Yeah.
And yeah, back to what we were saying earlier, like, he didn't show a shred of humor. Maybe the Nick Cage thing could have been like, "Okay, this is quirky. Nick Cage is a choice." But
Mhm.
yeah, what do you think about, yeah, not including humor in profiles?
So, okay, I'm a humor writer. Like I've written a lot of humor, and so I know a lot of humor writers. I can tell you they do not always come across as funny. Even in a first real person meeting, a lot of them are very dry, very deadpan, somewhat depressed, kind of dark, where you kind of have to get to know people to realize that they're funny in a lot of cases, which is why I don't put a whole lot of stock in either presenting that or trying to read it initially. Now, that said, I don't think there's anything wrong. Like, if you can write a profile that's genuinely funny, that's great. That's a good thing. It's going to be appealing, but I don't think it's a necessity. And I think that is something you have to kind of gauge in real life.
Yeah, I agree. I did a lot. I think I had 400 matches by the end of my journey on
Okay.
Hinge,
Mhm.
and there were just so many times where the humor really did not land. It's like, I know you're trying to
Right.
be funny, but
Well,
it doesn't work.
that's one of our rhetorical patterns, which I call the Greek tragedy of the funny guys. Because, like in a Greek tragedy, people always run into their fate while trying to avoid it. So these guys are like trying to prove they're funny and in the very process proving how unfunny they are. And that is
Yeah.
the far bigger problem on the it's almost like they're like to me having a sense of humor is that like you have a sense of what's funny whereas these guys are like on the stage, right? They're like but
Right. Yeah,
and that's
yeah, they're,
not
like,
like, most women
performing.
don't like that.
No. Okay, so you have all these rhetorical patterns on you have a whole highlight on your Instagram page.
Yeah.
And I guess another question I had was, when you notice one, is the point just to you do burn, you block to burn when you see it, or is it like a proceed with caution?
It depends on the pattern. So there's a
Mhm.
few such as, test and apologize,
Well, yeah.
disciplinary directive, those should be blocked immediately. Those are abusive people. And then, like, the tragedy of the funny guys, it could just be a guy trying too hard, right? Like, that's not necessarily toxic. So it really depends on the pattern.
Okay, noted. And I guess listeners, the whole point of this is that you get through the apps a little bit faster. You get through people a little faster because you are noticing these things more quickly so that you can just make decisions and not linger and be like, "Oh, like projecting all this stuff onto a profile." It's like, "Nope, here it is in plain sight." The
Right.
tested apologize. There it is.
Yep,
Yeah.
moving on.
Yeah. All right, so I want to go through some of these screenshots with you. I just want to do some of this live with you because it just seems so fun. Okay, so I have a few bios from Bumble, and I'm just going to read them. We'll kind of see if we can pick out any of these patterns. Ready?
Mhm. Yep.
All right. I'm a career focused, open minded, and mature guy looking for someone similar. I like hiking, working out, sports, traveling, drinks, video games, and trying new things. Only here for serious dates. A happy marriage is the goal.
Okay. So on the positive side, he seems to be pretty clear that he's looking for like a
Yeah.
monogamous serious partnership. Open-minded is frequently coded toward sex, but I don't like
Mm.
there's nothing else in that language that sort of corroborates that particular analysis in this case. Like you have to look at everything in context. So like he might just mean open-minded. Maybe he's like very lefty politically or something, right? Like, so
Right, right,
I would
right.
have to like get more information about that. The opening line, one of our
Career focused.
patterns is I'm a very busy man. The I'm a very busy man pattern.
Okay.
It's these guys who seem to think that they're like the president of the United States or something when they're actually like in middle management. And those guys are a problem. I don't know, like again, I don't know that I would say this language rises to that level. I would not block to burn this guy based on
Okay.
what you told me alone.
So what I kind of picked up here was the only here for serious dates, I guess, but I guess it does align with your guidelines for a positive profile,
Mhm.
which is like the clarity, directness. So
Yeah,
I was curious what you thought about that, but I guess it kind of does align with a good profile.
yeah,
Okay,
I think I'm okay with that, yeah.
cool. I like that. Okay, that's good to know. All
Mhm.
right, the next one, mostly looking for LTR, long-term relationship, open to dates and friends. TBH, I have a lot of, in parentheses, too many interests and activities. Just ask.
Yeah, no, block. Alright, so there's a
What is
lot
this?
of red flags in there.
Yeah.
Um, in forensic linguistics, which is, like the branch of linguistics that's used in criminal cases, we talk about qualifying words like mostly or really.
Mm,
So a famous line from I think it was Bill Clinton who was trying to get out of the fact that he'd been meeting up with a mistress said, "I haven't really seen her in the last 10 years." And it was that word really that tipped off the linguists. He's been the focus of a lot of forensic linguistics study because he had seen her, right? And the way that works is people don't like to flat out lie, like gives us like a cognitive clash. So this all happens below the level of consciousness, but we insert these qualifying words like I mostly want a long-term relationship, but I mean maybe not tonight,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, we can
So,
clearly see that mostly means not probably not really here or, like,
right.
not.
Right,
Yeah.
like if I have to, right?
Yeah.
Because he's also trying to capture a wide swath of matches. So he doesn't want to drive away the women who want that, which is
Right.
going to be probably a greater percentage. And then
Yeah.
the whole like just ask, nobody likes that. That's a problem because it's lazy. And also like I'm so busy, I have too many interests. Like that's kind of an I'm the prize rhetorical pattern. Like you're just probably not that fascinating, or you can't focus on one thing, which is frankly also a problem for an adult man.
Yeah, I agree, and also I think it's like I kinda see a sign of laziness, so, like, if you have so many interests, why didn't you choose some to list in this
Yes,
profile?
exactly. Yeah, they're right there at the top of your head. Yeah.
Hello. Okay, great, next one. Fun, kind, and always up for an adventure, whether it's exploring new places, trying new foods, or enjoying a chill game night. I'm all about good vibes and great company, looking for someone to share laughs, experiences, and maybe a little mischief along the way.
Yeah, so, I mean, for one thing, I think this guy is exactly who he's telling us he is and
Yeah.
wants what he wants fun, he wants a good time. If you wanna get married, then yeah, don't date this guy.
Yeah.
Or if you
Okay,
want a
that's
serious
good to
long-term
know.
monogamous partnership, then yeah, absolutely black to burn on this one. The word
Wow. Is it
chill
okay,
alone, yeah, is
the
coded.
word chill. Okay, I wanted to talk about the word chill because that came up so many times when swiping for 5 minutes yesterday. I was just kinda looking. What's wrong with the word chill, and why should we take it out of our profiles?
Yeah. So there's nothing like inherently wrong with the word chill if you can strip away the gendered implications, which you can't on the dating apps. Because I suspect a lot of these guys have felt like women want too much from them, or their expectations are too high, or they're no fun like they were when we first met, right? And chill becomes coded for like I want to do whatever I want all the time with no
Okay.
implications. Yeah.
Even if it's in the sentence, "enjoying a chill game night." So you think the word chill in general can be a red flag?
I think that's at least a gray area. The like
Okay.
if they're looking for a woman who's chill, absolutely not. Like done. This example, I mean, this to me just doesn't sound like a guy who's dating for a
Yeah.
serious relationship. But yeah, no, would I block to burn him just for saying chill night? No.
I think I'd block to burn to say for saying a little mischief along the way.
Oh
That
yeah,
to
for
me
sure.
is
Yep,
the, like,
yep,
I'm looking for just a, F buddy or, like,
yep,
just yeah, some a chill, casual situation. Yeah,
yeah,
good to know. I love this because I do think the word chill is such an issue, but I find that this is helpful to know that does if it's describing something that isn't a person or a
right.
relationship, maybe it's
Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
yeah,
We can use better words, people, though. So if you have that in your profile, please take it out.
yeah. Relaxed, a relaxed night at home.
So I wanna go into some messages. These are from my actual messages I've found in my screenshots. So this one is a really common one. Obviously, we know this, like, this is a very obvious red flag, but I wanna hear you talk about it. So this guy at the end of our conversation, I basically was like, "What I'm curious about what you're looking for," right? We had this whole conversation about our dogs, and I'm like, "What are you looking for?" And he goes, "For sure, I think I'm looking for something casual with potential to be serious. I don't wanna rush anything, but I'd like to meet someone. What about you?" What
Yeah.
what are the dangers here?
I mean, he's not looking for a serious relationship at that point.
Yeah.
I don't think. Now, people surprise themselves. So, like, is it possible that this guy could really be taken with you or some other woman, right? And change his tune and change his mind about what he wants? Yeah, totally. I mean, that does happen. But like I was saying before, you have to kind of play the odds, and if my goal was to get married or find a long-term monogamous partner, I would not proceed with that conversation.
Yeah.
He answered a question that you asked. I think I would say something like, "All right, sounds like, we don't align, but I wish you all the best."
Yeah, I mean, this is a tricky one. It comes up a lot. I think men will lean on this language of, "I want something serious, but I need to see where it goes." Like, "Let's meet first and see where it goes, but I do want something serious." And I kind of struggle with that because it's like, yeah, that's the process of dating, dude. Like,
Exactly.
you know?
Everybody feels that
So I
way.
don't that's why I don't think you should necessarily be scared off by that language because they again, I think it could be not in this case, but in other cases, it could be worth meeting and exploring that more because I think guys are just afraid to like be sucked into a relationship and trapped really quickly because women tend to just kind of be like, well, my biological clock is ticking. Like I
Yeah.
need to know quickly. Yeah.
Well, and in their defense, that can be a problem. Like on both sides of the gender coin, people push too fast. But one of the things we use a lot in Burned Haystack is how else could this be said, right? So
Mm,
let's play. I'm going to ask you to read that message again, and then I'm going to give you an example of how else I think he could have said it that would give you the same information, but be good reason to continue with him.
okay.
Okay,
So he
so
said, I think I'm looking for something casual with the potential to be serious. I don't want to rush anything, but I'd like to meet someone. What about you?
all right, here's how else he could have said that. All right, so I'm speaking as him. My long-term goal is to find a partner and be exclusive with that person. I have noticed a lot of people on the dating apps try to rush into things very quickly, and that makes me uncomfortable because I like to get to know someone as a person. So the first date, I'm just kind of, hoping to get more of a feel for who you might be, but my long-term goal is a long-term serious
Yeah,
monogamous partnership.
that's a much better
Wouldn't
way to
that
say
land
that.
differently?
Yeah, of course. That
Yeah.
lands a it, like, lands more self-aware too. It's like,
Yes.
I am afraid of this. Like, I'm
Right.
being vulnerable, I'm sharing a fear, and
Right.
this is my approach.
And
Yeah,
here's why, like, he'd be giving a
yeah,
reason, like, "This has been a problem," and also, it would account for your feelings, right? Like, that would indicate that this is a person who's like, "I don't want her to think I'm some fly-by-night F buddy," right? So,
yeah.
I'm gonna take some care and time and thought with my words to be sincere, because that's a green.
Alright. Yeah, guys, if you're listening and you're in this camp, I hope that you heard Jenny's version because that's a great version. Okay, last one really quick. This one's also very common. This guy, we were talking on Bumble, and he asked me a question, and then he goes, "I'm horrible with this app, wanna meet for coffee or drink in person," and this was after 4 messages.
Yes.
What's
No.
going on here?
I don't I don't know exactly. I mean, the truth is that texting on Bumble is no different than texting on an iPhone. Like, it's the and he already has the app, right? So you're
Right.
talking. I don't know. I don't know if men just see that as a, like a shortcut to more intimacy, or if it's like, I don't know, a win to get someone's number. But the whole, like, I'm not good with this app, that's made up. Like, and honestly, if that's true, then you're not dateable. Like, if you can't navigate Hinge, then no, like, you
Yeah.
can't
Or
build a.
maybe you just don't use dating apps and find a
Yeah,
different way. I don't know.
right.
Yeah.
Or you're just not that serious, or like you can't be bothered to check it, which again, like, if someone is so absent-minded that they can't remember to check their dating app, then they're just not that invested in dating anyway.
Yeah. I agree. I appreciate the insight because it's like, I know this is wrong, but you kind of give me an answer as to why.
Yeah, and it's a
Wow.
cop-out. I'm not good with this, it doesn't take, like, a special talent.
Agree fully.
Like,
So, wow, we've covered so much ground, and I'm sad to have to wrap this up. We talked a lot about Burned Haystack Dating Method. There's a lot of rules, but what's one thing someone who wants to start could do today to try?
what are we talking about, women? Like,
Yes.
if a woman wants to start using it, to try to start using the method.
Yeah, because
Um,
there's a lot of rules. So it's like, how do we
yes.
dive in, but like slowly?
Yeah, no, I think the best thing to do is I'm actually working with a lady who she retired from teaching here, and she's a widow, and she's like, "I wanna try it. I'm gonna dive in." And I said, "How about you join the she's, like, never done this before, right? I said, "How about you join the Facebook group and read about it for a like, start to get a feel, be in some conversations." Like, I think being in community with other people who are doing this, whether or and it doesn't have to be my Facebook group, right? It could be, if you have a group of girlfriends who's doing it. But the really scary thing about being on a dating app is that, like, you feel so isolated and start to wonder, am I like the crazy one? Like, is this really all
Mhm.
okay? And I just, whatever, I'm a prude, or I don't get it, or so I
Right.
think having like a team of support around you is goal number one before you dive in at all.
Yeah, okay, I like that, I like that a lot, that's doable, and
Yeah.
again, I like the Facebook group in the show notes, and I love the idea of starting it with your friends and doing it with
Yeah,
your friends.
right. Yeah, having a buddy is great because
Yeah,
you've got to mock it a little bit or it'll eat you alive, right? Like, there's so much
it's
nonsense
so
and you
true.
have to call it out or you'll internalize it and it'll hurt you,
Yeah.
and you don't want that.
So what's one thing I know there's probably a lot of things you wanna see in dating, but what's one thing you wanna see more of in today's dating culture?
I think seriousness. Like, if you're going to do this, if you're gonna get on a dating app or put yourself in any kind of dating arena, if it's speed dating or whatever, like, just don't do that if you don't really want to meet people. And I hear this complaint from, people of all genders. Like, it's a pretty serious endeavor with a lot of consequences. It really shouldn't be taken lightly. It should be, you should treat
Yeah,
it with the gravity that it
uh,
deserves.
I fully agree, that's why I called my podcast Dating Intentionally. You
Yeah,
know,
it's
I
a
a
tool, so
hundred
yeah,
percent
it's in your
agree, yeah.
tool belt, right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, this has been amazing. I am so appreciative that you came on to dive in with me and nerd out with me. Where can we find more of you?
Alright, so the Facebook group, but you can just search Burned Haystack and that'll come up. On Instagram, I'm at word case scenario, so it's like worst case, but word, W-O-R-D, with underscores, word case
Yeah.
scenario. I'm on Blue Sky, which I don't pay much attention to, but I'm trying to. And then there's a lot of information on my Burned Haystack Substack, and it's all in front of the paywall. So
Yeah,
you can read everything for free on Substack and
it's
interact.
awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thanks again, Jenny. This has been so great.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been great talking to you, and, like, I'm impressed with your knowledge of the method. You've, like, internalized it, which is the goal for everybody, like, that's what makes it work, so thank
Yeah, and I
you.
hope more people do.